Good morning, or whenever you're watching this. This is the third day here, but only second full day here. It's our last day in Rome until we go to Florence, and then we'll come back for another day in Rome. And whew, somebody there almost bit it on one of the uneven stones. I'm sure he actually held it together pretty good, but whew, something to watch out for here. If you grew up a child of the 80s like I did, you might have heard of United Colors of Benetton, or maybe outside of that. It's a brand that was huge for a while. You saw all of the different commercials. There were a whole bunch of kids from all over the world, and they would have these rainbow cloths, and it was just very visually striking.
Very diverse before that was a thing.
Yeah, diversity before it was really a thing, because it was sort of this worldwide brand.
Yeah.
And so we've seen a number of stores out here. So even though in America, it's not as easy to come by anymore, in Italy, particularly Rome, we haven't seen any other place, it's not so hard to find. And their clothes still look pretty good, actually. I mean, obviously they're more modernized. They don't look like 80s clothes anymore. Check out the back of this truck. It just has wine and wine and wine. Lots and lots of it. The wine is very free-flowing here.
And very inexpensive.
Yeah. Yesterday, during the tours, there was wine on the first tour because there was food, and there was wine on the second tour, and it was just house white or house red. Nothing spectacular. I mean, they were good. I don't want to diminish that. I'm just saying, like, no fancy brands or anything. They were just house wines. And the white and the red were great, but somebody was telling us last night at dinner or during the trip, while we stopped for some food, that the wine here is really inexpensive. And I made the comment that, I don't think we knew that, because the only wine we've had have been part of tours and they've been provided. I haven't actually bought a glass of wine yet, so I'm not sure how much it is, but she said get a glass for like $4, sometimes €2.50,
for 20.
maybe a bottle for 20. Like, that's actually pretty cool. Breakfast in Italy is usually very simple. It's usually some kind of pastry and then a cappuccino, or in this case espresso, which is what Josh is getting, just some kind of coffee drink. I've discovered on this trip that I actually like cappuccino. It's not my favorite, but I like it. And then I got a custard one, and Josh got like essentially a pan au chocolat, but a chocolate croissant, or cornetto is what they call the croissants here. This all was like €4.80. Yeah, yesterday we paid like 20 something for similar. This is €4.80. It was amazing. Yeah, it's like $5. Here is the place that we went to, Bar San Marcello. The word bar here doesn't mean bar like it does in America. Usually it means like there's a bar for you to kind of sit and have your cappuccino, which is what a lot of people do. So you don't often sit down, you just kind of stand at the bar and have your cappuccino. We also got food, so we sat down with it, but you could stand at the bar and eat it too. I'm gonna show you this column, and I'll zoom in on it in a second so you can see some of the detail. But this is Trajan's column, and Josh is going to tell us a little bit about it.
One of the things I teach in typography is Trajan's column. It's roughly from 114 AD or so, and the reason why I teach it in a class like typography is that at the base of it, or somewhere that we can't see right now, is one of the sort of perfect examples of modern type, essentially. Trajan is actually a font you can find on many computers, and it references this column behind us. It's still in Greek or Roman, but the point is that you'd be able to recognize every letter on it no matter what, and it's still used as a reference for many of our letters today.
So let me zoom in. So it tells the story of a Roman conquering. They would go out and conquer, and they would come back, and they would tell the story so that people could see. And even though the column is sort of standing on its own here, there were things around it. Like, you can see that there were more construction. So there were balconies that people could go and read the whole story, because you couldn't see it all from one angle because it spirals up. And then sort of there's the base there. We did come by this last night on our bike tour, and it was gorgeous, but I didn't think you'd be able to see the detail as well. So let me zoom in a little bit. And it was painted. The most vibrant colors, of course, being yellow and red, which were the easiest to do, which is why our guide said, which is why the Italian sports teams have yellow and red as their colors, because it was very common in the Roman days because it was the easiest paint. So it's weird to think about these things, right? Because we always see them white. And same thing with like old like Greek statues. They were painted. It's just the paint came off over years and years and years of being exposed, and they were never touched up. But they used to be painted all the time. This is the monument of Victor Emmanuel. And obviously it's huge. And for a long time it was just this empty shell because Italy ran out of money and they couldn't finish it. It's finished now. But what's interesting about this, I mean, there's a lot of things interesting about this, but one thing that they talked about in both the tours we had yesterday, see the dude sitting on the horse up there? Right there. Now from this angle that doesn't look that big because you have this giant building behind it, but that horse is big enough to fit people in it. And there is a famous picture of a whole bunch of men in suits sitting inside toasting. And I'll put that picture here so you can see it. But that it really is that big that you can fit a number of full-grown men in it for them to do a toast. And that is incredible. Pull out again so you can see the whole thing. Clearly it's under some kind of construction. A lot of things here are. I mean, it takes a lot to restore a city that's open air all the time. The weather does pretty terrible things to monuments. This was all made from one of the most expensive marble at the time. It still might be.
$100+ a square
meter or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. Our guide last night was saying that it was the most expensive at the time and probably still is. And it was in the hundreds of dollars for like a little bit. And of course back then it'd be cheaper, but you know, it'd be a commensurate price. But yeah, and look how big this is and how much marble it would have needed to take it. Which sort of explains why Italy ran out of money a lot. They had very grand designs that didn't always have the money to do it. So sometimes it would take forever to get things done. Hundreds of years to get things done. We'll talk more about this when in the Vatican, but there was something in the Vatican that took like 120 years. I mean, fathers and sons and grandsons all worked on the same thing over 120 years of time. It's just incredible. We're just walking along and you can see the Colosseum way over there at the end of this street. And we were here on a bike last night. But what's incredible is, okay, you turn to your right and there's this. That's the backside of that building, but there's some kind of structure down here. We'll go take a look at that more in a second. And if you turn around, or turn this way, there's more over there, across the street. See that kind of roundish building right there? He was equating it to the Hoover Dam. You build dams in this sort of like curved arc because it's a stronger structure, it's a stronger shape. And so apparently there's a hill on the other side of that likes to move, like it pushes. So they built that to kind of push back against the hill, and they built it in that shape because it's a stronger pushback. But I don't remember the whole story, I'm sorry. I had a lot of wine on that trip. I mean, I wasn't like drunk that I couldn't ride the bike, but for me, it was a lot of wine. But yeah, it's just, this is what it's like. I mentioned, I think on the first day, that it's like an open air museum. You just walk around and there's stuff. And it's everywhere and it's ancient. Like, this is ancient. Who lived there? Who looked at this? You know, who built it? What were their hopes? What were their dreams? Did they accomplish them? Did they find love? Did they have children? Did they travel? It's just amazing to think how many people came before you did. And all the things that had to happen to get you here. And it was the same for all of them. They loved their kids. They had hopes and dreams, wants, things that they were looking to do with their lives. Many of them were laborers, unfortunately, and many of them were slaves, unfortunately. There was a whole area of Rome called the Jewish ghetto that essentially they came here. Not all of them were Jewish, but that was the name of the area. They came from Jerusalem often, and they were slaves, and they built a lot of this stuff. And there was an interesting story last night that he was telling. This is the area when we were overlooking where the sunset was, if you saw that video. He was telling a story about how when Hitler came, of course, Italy was part of the Axis powers in World War II. So when Hitler came here, they planted some trees and they put up some columns to block the synagogue so that Hitler didn't have to see it as he went parading down their main street as part of the war presentation, propaganda kind of thing. So it was unacceptable for Hitler to see a synagogue. So they figured out the lines of view and put stuff in the way of where the synagogue was. So they didn't like tear it down or anything. I think there would have just been way too many protests for that. Instead, they just covered it up so he couldn't see it. I'm not sure if he even knew it was there or if he was just, it was okay to be tricked, quote unquote, and just not see it. But wow, incredible story, right? About history that's not that long ago. Another thing I wanted to mention, and this is not a shock because, you know, I've been mentioning that there are tons and tons of churches here. Everywhere you look, there's a church. Well, people have to staff those churches. I have never seen so many priests and nuns walking around. Yeah, we have a seminary near us, and so we've seen them on occasion, right? Like at the grocery store.
We've seen more in 2 days.
Walking down the street, not often. Yeah, I've seen more in the last 2 days than we've seen probably in the whole 10 years. And they're just walking along. The nuns are very, dressed in their habits and stuff. So nuns in America don't always wear habits, and so you may not necessarily know that they are if you come across one. Some of them do, but not all of them do. Here, I mean, we have the I don't know if they're monks in the kind of the big brown robes. They look like Franciscan monks is what I would call them. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't want to offend anybody. Definitely nuns in the habit. And various different kinds, right? Like there's different kinds of habits and different kinds of orders, and it's incredible to see that because it's something that you don't see every day. It's unusual, but you note it, not in a bad way, but it's just sort of like, oh, okay, we've passed like 5 priests so far today, and at least 3 nuns just walking here, and it's been like an hour. The Colosseum is the second most visited monument in the world. I think behind the Eiffel Tower, but I don't know for certain. So you can see how crowded it is. To get in, you need to do a document check, so bring your passport and have your ticket and go through security, metal detector kind of thing. And I get the documents. They want to know who's here if something happens. The building could hold 60,000 people. When you come here, make sure you get the kind of tour that you want, because we did the one where you can actually go down in kind of the gladiator area. Otherwise, there are some that just take place around the top, so do your research. I wanted to do this one. I think it's extra compared to others, but not that much. The Colosseum was closed for a long time, but Mussolini reopened it, and they reinforced it with like these iron bands that you can see there. And they found a lot of remains of dead animals and old food and lots of stuff. My goodness. Wow. All right, we just got an info dump. I'll see how much of I can remember. So those stairs there indicate the first floor, and this is where the wealthy would sit. And there's only a little area there, but imagine that it went all the way around. And then the next level up is where the nobles and like equestrians, people who owned horses, lived, or excuse me, watched it from. And then higher up you had commoners and slaves. And apparently there was just a great view from every single level, and the acoustics were perfect, so most people could hear, but there was quite the roar of the crowd, I'm sure. The area we're standing on now would have been a wooden floor called an arena, and that's where the gladiators or the animals or people would fight. And before that, they would all be essentially backstage, which is down here, which were cages that held the animals and people, and they did have elevators that would bring everything from down here up to be out on the stage. Now, a common misconception is gladiators fought animals, but she was telling us that gladiators fought gladiators. The people who fought animals were like slaves, and if you won twice, then you could get your freedom. You could win Roman citizenship, you could win money, and so that's why somebody might want to do that. But she showed a picture. It was like they'd put out 50 animals and they'd put out 50 people, and if you were the winner, then you could even become a gladiator too. That's another reward that you could have had happen. I was looking at that picture. There were like rhinoceroses and lions and a giraffe. And it's like, wow, you have to kill 50 people and 50 animals? I don't think I could take out more than one rhino, if even. We're up on the second floor now. They pretty much had human hamster wheels that would move the pulleys, and when they were building it, it had a big scaffolding, and there's a spiral staircase in the middle for people to go up. Our guide last night was saying that this is the original Arc de Triomphe, like they took this and copy-pasted it to be the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. I haven't independently verified that. I don't know if it was hyperbole or not. I'm just telling you what he said. There's a lot of similarities to the one that's there, but I don't remember it well enough to know it perfectly. But I mean, you can see the overall shape, but you know, columns or things like this all look similar to each other in some way. Is it identical? I don't know. You be the judge. But I also love how you've got this kind of villa up on that hill. Somebody very wealthy must have lived there. A bunch of different columns, and you can see we're high up. There's people there on the ground. And it's not actually super crowded here. It's crowded, but not super crowded. Still on the same level. Went into the shop. There wasn't anything that interested us, but I love how you can see out. And then, of course, the view of the stage would be perfect from here. Remember, there's a big wooden floor, so it wouldn't have been all the way down into the catacomb area down there. It would just be pretty much at the level of the people that you see. Well, not those people down there right in the middle, but those people up there. This is the kind of marble that the whole thing was covered in from Tuscany. It's just an example of what this would have looked like completely covered in it before it was raided. This cross is not a religious symbol. This was one of the 50 water fountains that they had here in the Colosseum, so people could have fresh water from an underground river. This is an example of what would have been a latrine. They would have had wooden seats in here with holes in them that where people could go, because if you're in here and eating and drinking, people are going to need to go. And then they had water running through these channels, which would then lead out to a lake about 10 minutes away, or excuse me, a river 10 minutes away. Just took away the waste. And you can see people out there working on it today, and some of them are workers, some of them are engineers, some of them are archaeologists. It's incredible. They're essentially doing excavations, and they found the tunnels that led away the waste to the river down the way. So they discovered those, and they're excavating them right now. That does it for the Colosseum. We're moving on to the next part of the tour, which is ancient Rome, which I believe is going to be the Roman Forum. Walking to the next area on these very uneven stones. It's actually kind of fun. It's like high stake hopscotch. Here's a good further away view of Colosseum, keeping in mind that, remember, it used to be that tall all the way around, except for some earthquakes that knocked parts down of it. Wow. This is the Titus Arch. He's the one who was responsible for building the Colosseum. Well, not personally, but... And they commemorated him with an arch. That was the High Court of Rome over there. This is incredible. The room I'm in is filled with broken pottery. This was the trash bin. These would have held wine, medical wine, olive oil, fishes, salts. And even toys like this little wooden horse and dice. Oh, I'd love to play games with those dice. incredible panoramic view of the whole area up here on another little hill area. All these holes in the wall were hold wooden beams so they could have shelves on them to show statues. It's very tall. This was one of the first Catholic churches in Rome. See the paintings on the wall over there and on the columns. That's amazing. Here's a video depicting what it would have looked like at the time. A blue ceiling covered in stars, marble everywhere. What we've been essentially looking at through here is the palace of Caligula and other emperors, and they had multiple floors. They had private entrances because, of course, emperors were always afraid of being assassinated. And I mentioned to their tour guide, I'm like, well, considering how many emperors were, that would be a real fear. And she's like, but most of them were killed by their own family, so it didn't really help. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Get a good sense of the size of the palace from this point. All the way up there, where those people are. After last night seeing the outside, now we're going to see the inside of the Pantheon. And so this used to be a church. Pantheon means many gods. So this used to be many gods. Pretty much the Roman gods from back in the day. It has been converted into a Catholic church, as many of them have been. But you can see how beautiful. And what's really interesting is essentially you have this amazing dome. And it is open outside, so they have this incredible drainage system. So if it rains in here, then the water will drain out. And what was it, 3 days ago? So
It was April.
when Rome was founded, I think it was when Rome was founded, there was a particular day, and I'm sorry, I forget what it was. It was just a few days ago. Our guide was telling this last night. There's one day of the year where the sun shines directly through there onto the floor down here, right in the center, and that is the day that Rome was founded. Look it up. I'm sorry, I forget the date, but it was recently. Right now it's
2 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago max.
Monday, April 29th, and it was like,
26th or 24th?
I think he said 26th or 24th. We're guessing here, but it's right around that time. And apparently there's a way that you can tell. It's essentially a sundial too, like where the light falls. It tells you what date of the year it is. It's actually really cool. But you can see a lot of the statuary, and it is still a functioning church, by the way. Like, there are services. There are services here now. But you know, they had these big buildings, and they were like made to the Roman gods, and rather than tearing them down, they just repurposed them. This isn't the first church that used to be another kind of temple. Yeah. And so interesting. So women are supposed to have their shoulders covered, but like this woman here doesn't have one, and we watched them deny entry to a woman until she went and bought a shawl to wear over her shoulders. But then that woman over there doesn't have it. It seems to be selectively enforced. Like, technically knees are not supposed to be shown, but clearly there's a dude in shorts. I'm wearing shorts. That woman's wearing shorts.
I did get asked upon entrance to take off my hat.
Oh, okay.
And I asked the woman why, because she was wearing a hat, the one who instructed me, and she's like, men in church don't wear hats.
Got it. Men in church don't wear hats. So there are different rules for different genders in here, and so just be aware. Really, what I'm telling you about, if you are a woman, and I'm sorry that this might be selectively enforced, but you may be asked to cover your knees, you may be asked to cover your shoulders, or both, or you might not be. It's just best to be prepared. If you didn't bring something, I mean, I would keep like a little shawl or something in a bag if I was walking around, But if you didn't bring something, there are people outside who will sell you like a scarf or something that you can use to cover yourself, however they ask you to. But there's another woman without her. I mean, I'm not trying to police it or anything. I saw videos where people were saying that it seemed to be very selectively enforced. I'm sure that woman who just went out there and bought a shawl is going to come in here and be mad that she sees a whole bunch of people, or a whole bunch of other women without their shoulders covered. My goodness. That dome is just impressive. We're going to see a lot of other domes over the next few days, but this one is pretty incredible. Here's the tomb of Raphael, not the Ninja Turtle, but the painter and architect to whom the Ninja Turtle was named after. Some information here in case you want to pause and read that. The tomb of Victor Emmanuel, who I think was the guy who brought all of the different Roman cities, or excuse me, Italian city-states together to pretty much form Italy. Because otherwise it used to be a lot of like warring factions and stuff. Think about Shakespeare, right? Like in Much Ado About Nothing, they have their own little commune, and they pretty much self-govern and do all of that. And there was a lot of a different, I don't know, fiefdom is not the right word because there wasn't really a king, just areas that were controlled, and then that's where they fought and went off to war and that kind of thing. But I believe it was Victor Emmanuel that essentially got them all together. He ended up becoming king, but then Italy became more powerful because it was more unified. So the light is coming in here, and you can see it going down this way. So it's actually hitting like this wall where this dude is over there right now, which is very close to the entrance. So it's kind of lighting up this whole area. There is no other lighting in this entire place. It is all done by the opening in the ceiling, which means, of course, that it's only really usable during the day. There are candles on the altar. I'm not sure if they light them during the ceremonies, but as far as like other lighting, there's no windows, of course, and there's no torches or sconces for torches, anything like that. It was specifically meant to be lit by the big hole in the ceiling. In case you're curious about the rules of the Pantheon, here you go. No dogs, don't run on walls, don't make noise that could be annoying, don't eat food, don't behave in any way that is not in the keeping with the decorum of the moment. I like that. Carry out any form of commercial activity, offend the holy nature of the monument in any way, speak in a loud voice, or make a noise or cause any disturbance during religious services. So not too hard to follow. This sculpture is called The Ecstasy of St. Teresa. It's by Bernini, and it's just in a seemingly random church. Look at the folds of that. It looks like cloth. It's all marble. Here's just more of the church in general. There's art on the ceiling, but there's a mesh because I think it falls bit by bit. You can see pieces of it in the mesh there. There's lots of statuary and paintings. By the way, this is the church that we've been in. We had a bit of a laugh coming up here because we were walking down like that street over there, and Josh was like, "Oh, I think it might be that building with the cross on it." I'm like, "Well, in Italy, that doesn't necessarily mean anything because that building has a cross on it. That building has a cross on it, and that's the one we went into. That building up there has a cross on it, and there's one behind it that you could see when we were walking up the hill that has a cross on it, like this."
Welcome to.
But yeah, that was the one. See, it's just this church.
Nice little building.
In the middle of the city. It's not very big. I mean, at least the part that you can see. It goes back further, obviously, and there's an above part. But it's just in the middle of the city, and it has a Bernini in it.
And that's why it's famous.
Yep, exactly.
And that's also the difference. People almost have to know their art to come here and hunt for a Bernini, what is considered one of his finest pieces ever, and one of his most controversial, if not his most controversial.
If you know me or have watched my videos, you will know that I love fountains. I love water features. This one's amazing. When we were walking back last night from Roma Termini, we saw this off in the distance, but we didn't walk past it. We turned off on a street beforehand. So I'm glad we sort of found our way back here. Not on purpose, it just, happened. But it was fortuitous. This is the Fountain of the Naiads? Okay, that's what it's called, Fountain of the Naiads.
Late 19th century.
19th century.
And it's by...
Which you can see the Naiads, which if you don't know are like female water spirits, nymphs of some kind. And there's a few of them there. But that's beautiful. I love the water just splashing down on the dude, and it's gorgeous. We're in the Piazza della Repubblica, so it's essentially Republic Square. And we're not far from the Termini, which is that way. We're heading there now to scope out the train situation. We're taking a train to Florence tomorrow, and we want to kind of see what we need to do before we go, rather than be rushing to it and frustrated tomorrow. But look at these beautiful buildings around here. And then, of course, another church. If I showed you every church we went by, well, it's a basilica, but if I showed you every church or basilica we went by, I mean, I'd run out of space. But look at that. And you can tell it's old because anything that has that kind of brick,
thin brick,
the kind of sort of thin brick that's somewhat haphazardly placed, means it's old. Josh and I broke one of our rules. When we travel, we always say that we're never going to eat anywhere we could eat at home, because we could eat that at home. But the exception is if they have a wildly different menu worth trying. If you remember from my Japan videos, we went to McDonald's there and we went to Denny's there because they were wildly different, and we enjoyed them both. Here we went, they do have some different items on the menu, like the Parmigiano Reggiano,
chicken sandwich,
like chicken sandwich or burgers, just different kinds of toppings, but it's all sandwich and burgers. It's nothing wildly different like the shrimp filet-o or the shrimp nuggets in Japan. But so mostly we just wanted to get a couple of sodas because we were thirsty and needed a little caffeine. Sorry, I caught my attention. Somebody's on one of those pedal bikes where you pedal people around, and they were pushing it up. They were like behind it, pushing it up because they couldn't pedal it up. So it caught my attention. Anyway, let's stop for a second. So mostly we got the sodas, and then we also got like a 6-pack of spicy chicken nuggets. That we don't get spicy ones where we are. Wendy's has them, but the McDonald's doesn't. So we tried them, and they were good. They tasted like nuggets with a little bit of spice on them. And then, what they really have is a very robust McCafe there, like where you can get cappuccinos and espressos, and then a few.
What was that?
Yeah, well, we got a couple of things. One of them, it was like called a Maraschino. Maraschino. Anyway, I thought it was going to be cherry tasting, like maraschino. No, it's really just like layers of chocolate, cream, and coffee, and espresso. It was very, very coffee-y. And then the other thing we got was the like cafe crema, which is just sort of like think of like a Frosty, but sort of caramel coffee flavored. That was actually pretty good, but they give it to you in like a really tiny cup. You take it almost like a shot. But yeah, I would try it. I'm glad we went in there and did that. Mostly, like I said, the sodas. But while we were in there, we thought we'd try a few things, but we're not quite ready for dinner, so we didn't want to get one of the burgers. And of course, they're probably not going to be that much different than the usual burgers with just different toppings. We're going to get some Italian food while we're here. We went to Negresso, which is just a few doors down from where we're staying. I got the lasagna. I love personal lasagnas where they cook it. I not just take a piece off of a lasagna. And Josh got the margherita pizza.
Not exactly what I thought, but okay. More American style.
I know it's a little more American style than we were expecting, but it looks good. We're ending our night with some gelato, which is appropriate. I got banana and strawberry. The strawberry is very good. The banana, if it's banana, some of their flavors are kind of mixed. If it's banana, it's very subtle. It's still good, but it doesn't taste very banana-y. And Josh got dark chocolate and strawberry. Yep, and then they have little wafer or whatever you want on the top of it. These two together were 10 euro. And so far they've been delicious. And one thing that's wonderful is they're served like this, like the gelato is covered. And people swear by that versus the one that you can see out that hauls with the fancy stuff, because why isn't it melting? What stabilizer's in it? As this is considered to be more pure. That's just the lore, believe it or not. I forgot to mention this, but dinner was excellent. Josh's pizza was good. It wasn't like crispy or anything. It was a little like soggy. The flavors were great, but it was very simple. I think he was expecting more like what we had earlier today, which is crunchy, but it's just a different kind of pizza. I had the lasagna, and oh, it was amazing. I don't know if it's the best lasagna I've ever had. I don't know what the best lasagna I've ever had is. I don't know if I've met a lasagna I didn't like, but anyway, it was very good. Lasagna was 12, the pizza was 8. Got a Coke Zero, which was like 3.50, so it was, 25 euro or so for our meal. And then you see we went out for gelato afterwards. We saw that place walking up, and the banana caught my eye, but I don't think I ended up getting the banana. So anyway, thanks for joining us on our second full day in Rome, but third day here. Tomorrow we're going to Florence. We have our train tickets already bought. Our train leaves at 8:10. We went to the terminal today to understand how that all works, and we have it all figured out. Because we just don't like uncertainty, and we were in the area, so we thought, let's go check it out. And so it's great. So it means for an early morning though to get on a train. So join us in Florence day 1 in the next video.